Oh, and it is Big Rich, and we got a special edition of Pirate Chat today. It is Friday on the 16th of August, about 3:15 Eastern time, and the Buccos are going to be taking on the Texas Rangers at Globe Life this coming week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we've got the radio pre and post game host, TV play-by-play guy, and philanthropist as well, Mr. Jared Sandler, with us. Jared, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Rich. It's Paul Skeens Day right now, right? I believe isn't this a big day for Pirates fans?
It is. It is. We're trying to get ourselves a little trifecta up here with Skeens and Jared Jones and Mitch Keller, but just got to keep them healthy. That's the big thing.
Yeah, no kidding. I think the Rangers would subscribe to that desire, and sadly, and this isn't a good thing for baseball, but I think 28 other teams as well. But I'm glad that Paul Skeens has been healthy this year. He's been a whole lot of fun to watch, and he's been great for baseball, and obviously great for the Pirates.
How big of a buzz was there at the stadium whenever he was starting in the All Star game?
Yeah, I mean, when he walked out of the dugout and was making his way through the outfield to the left center field bullpen, you kind of heard a little bit of a different cadence from the crowd, and then there were plenty of people who were around the bullpen watching him go through his routine, and then when obviously he was on the mound pitching, there was a lot of excitement. It's a pity, and it's just one of the parts of baseball. But his matchup with Aaron Judge, which so many people were looking forward to, lasted like one pitch, and Judge grounded out. So you didn't really get to see like a 5, 6, 7 pitch battle of power versus power. But yeah, I mean, I we were talking about this the other day. I just don't think, Rich, when I was growing up in the 90s, there were a number of pitchers who, when they were on the mound in your hometown, you wanted to get that ticket, or if the Mariners were coming to town, hey, is Randy Johnson pitching? I want to see him. If the Red Sox were coming, is Pedro pitching? And you would get a ticket specifically for that game. And there just aren't many guys in the league these days who probably yield that sort of interest. But Paul Skeens is not only one of them, he might be at the very top of the list. And so I know a lot of people are excited to see that Paul Skeens would be pitching, or at least is supposed to pitch in this upcoming series.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very excited to see him at the at the home of the Rangers. Never know, maybe get to do some World Series stuff there at some point against the Rangers at some point. That'd be my dream World Series anyway, being a Pittsburgh guy living in Texas. But talking about these two teams, man, the Rangers have lost 8 out of their last 11, if I remember right. The Pirates have lost 10 in a row. It's two teams that are kind of spinning their wheels at the moment. What are you hoping to find in this series from the Rangers end of things to try to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately the ship is probably, if it hasn't sailed, it is sailing away from the dock in terms of the playoffs being a possibility this year. I mean, the Rangers are in a position now where they probably need to win 18 of their next 20 games to just even have a chance. That would maybe, depending on how the Astros played over that 20-game stretch, I guess it could vault them into first place, but in all likelihood would probably just put them within striking distance. And so you win 18 of your next 20, you're within striking distance. You can't table off after that. You got to, keep going. So I think the Rangers right now, obviously they're not mathematically eliminated. With the way the American League is played out, the wild card really isn't a realistic option for Texas, just because of all the teams between them and that third spot. And so they're sort of in a situation where they've got to go on a run just to kind of be considered a contender again. It would almost be patronizing to look at the Rangers' record and try and express or share that they are fighting for a playoff spot, because they're closer to, I think someone said their odds of getting the first pick in the draft are actually 7 times higher than their odds of making the playoffs. That's just kind of, unfortunately, the position they've put themselves in with a really rough second half. You mentioned 8 of 11. I mean, they've won one series since the All-Star break, and that was against the White Sox. They have not won another series. And so they went from being, right there in a 3-team AL West race to really falling behind in what is now a 2-team race between the Astros and Mariners.
Yeah, and I mean the Pirates can fully understand that particular aspect of things because right in the hunt for a wild card spot, couple games over 500, lose 10 in a row, and now it's swimming upstream, last in the division kind of deal. But I did, when you look at what the Rangers have been through this year, a big chunk of it's the Red Cross. I mean, the IL has been an absolute enemy for the Rangers this year. You lose Josh Young first week of the season. You lose Cody Bradford, the second week of the season? And he's gone for a long time. Every starting pitcher, if I remember correctly, except for Andrew Haney, has spent time on the injured list. It's just been one guy after the next, and then some underperforming hitters who had career years last year. But even your studs like Simeon and Seager aren't exactly putting up those kind of numbers. It's just kind of just been a vicious cycle watching it every night from here at the house. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at every one of their regulars from last year who are back with the team this year, none of them have had seasons that have matched what they did last year. And Josh Smith really wasn't a regular last year. He's the one guy whose statistical production has exceeded, what he did last year. Now, Corey Seager got off to a slow start since I think the 38th or 39th game he played. From that point on, which is, we're now almost at 100 games since for him. He's been last year's Corey Seager. So, if you look at the overall numbers, they're not great. But, over this stretch in which the Rangers have struggled, he hasn't. He's been the one guy who's kind of answered the call. But, Marcus Semien had a really rough June. And overall, his numbers aren't that great. Adolis Garcia had a great April, and he hasn't been the same guy since. I guess here over the last week plus, he's gotten back to being productive offensively, but that's kind of in the way of being a singles hitter, which is not what you expect out of Adolis Garcia. So I mean the injuries are definitely hurt, but everyone deals with them. And one of the hallmarks of last year's team is that they they dealt with a ton of injuries in the second half, but they had such great depth and they were able to overcome those injuries. And this year, the team just hasn't been able to do that because, not only have they not demonstrated the same level of depth, but the guys who are supposed to be the ones who, carry the torch and help lead the charge just haven't been nearly as effective as they were last year.
You mentioned Josh Smith, and he has just been an absolute spark plug for this team. He's played tremendously well all year. Wyatt Langford also, coming in as a rookie, had a really nice start, got hurt, and since he came off the IL, he's been playing really well. And I'll tell you what, I really love his defense. Talk a little bit about Wyatt Langford and also another guy that we're talking about the injured list again, Evan Carter. Has been gone most of the year with a back injury. Do we conceivably see both of those guys out there next year, or are we just looking at a blossoming Wyatt Langford taking over that spot?
Specifically in center field?
In the outfield in general. I mean, whether you leave Leody in center and have Wyatt in left or put Wyatt in center.
Yeah. My guess is you don't have Leody in center. Whether it's Wyatt or Evan Carter or someone who's not currently in the organization, you could convince me of either of those three options. I think if you add the fourth option of Leody Taveras as the center fielder, I would say that's the most unlikely. But I think to some degree with Evan Carter, if he's dealing with a back thing, I know that they feel like the rest over the course of this coming off season will help and allow him to start fresh and healthy. Interestingly, because he's so young, he's 21, he grew an inch last year. He was telling me that, one of the reasons why he's having these lingering issues is because he's putting a lot of stress on his body while he's still growing. And most of us, at that age are done growing. I stopped growing, I think, when I was like 8 years old. And most professional athletes or most Major League Baseball players aren't 21 when they come up. And so they probably are done growing as well. But does that give you pause in throwing him in a high leverage defensive position that can be taxing physically in center? Do you kind of pick your spots? It just depends on how the roster looks. The Rangers might, platoon a little bit with Evan Carter. So, maybe that leads them to get a guy who can play center field when Evan Carter's not in the lineup, but maybe Evan plays when he is. And, who knows? I think with Wyatt Langford, same thing. I could see, a year in which Wyatt is a regular at one spot, or I could see them, having him play center field for 50 games and a corner spot for 70 games and maybe DHing for another 20. I don't know. I don't know that. I think they've got the flexibility to maneuver. I don't think they've got to necessarily go into the offseason thinking this guy's going to be here, this guy's going to be there. I think they can see what opportunities there are to acquire talent, figure out how those puzzle pieces fit, and then proceed accordingly.
We talked a little earlier about Skeens and Jared Jones and those guys. The Rangers have a couple of guys in their minor league system on the pitching side that are really going to be exciting when they come up. Jack Leiter had a cup of coffee last season. Didn't turn out exactly, setting the world on fire, but he did okay. And then, of course, Kumar Rocker. What are you seeing from those guys right now? And is there excitement about one or both being on the opening day roster for 25?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both have a legitimate chance to break camp with the club. If not, then I would expect both those guys, if they're healthy, to spend more time with the big league club than not. I think that if the Rangers were contending, there's a chance that Kumar Rocker would maybe come up and help the bullpen. But because they don't need to add him to the 40-man roster this offseason, it probably doesn't make sense for them to make that move prematurely. But yeah, I mean, I obviously haven't gotten to watch them, just seeing and reading and hearing and talking to people. But Kumar Rockers looked like a man amongst boys, pitching in Double-A. I think he finally gave up his first Double-A run when he started last night. I would imagine maybe would consider moving him up, giving him a few opportunities in Triple-A. Because he's not on the 40-man roster, he never officially went on a rehab assignment. So he kind of was this gray area of like a rehab assignment versus just, pitching. And he's done really well. He works quickly. He pounds the zone. His fastball velocity's there. And then with Jack Leiter, yeah, I mean, his three major league outings were not very good. But I think sometimes, he gets victimized by a few things. One, he was the second pick in the draft. Sometimes the second pick in the draft could be a future ace. Paul Skeens wasn't guaranteed to be the first pick, right? Some people thought it'd be Dylan Cruz. Well, Paul Skeens ended up as the second pick. People would probably have that sort of a ceiling on him. When Jack Leiter was drafted, most people who had followed him and had scouted him, as much as there's, a whole ocean of unknown for any kid who gets drafted, most people said, hey, this guy's not an ace, but, he could be a really good number 2 or a number 3 in a rotation, which if you draft a guy second and that's who he becomes, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you pass up on a guy who ends up winning 3 Cy Youngs, that's maybe all right. You look back, right. But the second overall pick, if you get a guy who can, be that sort of a pitcher for you, that's great. He also was drafted by an organization that really has had no success in the last few decades of drafting and developing pitching. And so the excitement of getting a pitching prospect whose last name was a notable last name, who pitched for a major college program, threw a no-hitter on a big stage, all these things added to a lot of excitement and expectation, when in reality, Jack Leiter was a draft-eligible sophomore who basically didn't have his freshman year because of the pandemic in terms of development. Yeah. And he's come up and, at 24 years old, he's not necessarily behind schedule. He's had a great year in Triple-A after a really poor year in Double-A last year. And so big picture, he's taken a major step forward this year. Now, there's a big gap between Triple-A and the majors. And, we still got to find out whether or not that success he's had in Triple-A this year will translate to the big league level. And will it translate better as a starter or as a reliever? I think all of those are fair questions. But I do think there's definitely an expectation that Jack Leiter is going to come up and impact the team in 2025 in some capacity.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing both of them. I think Jack Leiter hopefully will have the Jackson Holiday stage of things, where it didn't go so great the first time, but comes back and, sets the world on fire. I really hope he does. Getting into the broadcasting end of things, broadcaster to broadcaster. You've been doing a lot with Hall of Famer Eric Nadel and Matt Hicks on the radio side this year. Done some play-by-play on TV as well for Bally Sports Southwest. talk a little bit about the difference between when you're doing the radio side and you're doing the TV side.
Well, I think I'm probably not good looking enough to be on TV. Thankfully, they only put you on camera for about 60 seconds, and then the rest of it's on the field, which is probably what's best. I don't know. I mean, you can see my hair, Rich. It's I don't think that this is suitable for all ages, but yeah, the TV stuff is really hard. It's a lot of fun, but it's it's definitely a different challenge. You got all sorts of people who are a part of the production, because it is more of a production. Whereas on radio, it's really just, Matt, Eric, and me, and no one tells us what to say or when to say it. We get to make all those decisions ourselves. And so, it's just kind of a different beast, but I enjoy both. It's been a lot of fun. The first TV games I did were with Mike Bassick, and getting to talk baseball with him is a blast. But, I've grown up in this booth with Eric and Matt, and, grew up listening to Eric, and, I'm thankful that, not only do we work together, but we're, incredibly close. And, we all, it's like a little family. And, I got my quirks. I annoy the heck out of them. Matt has his quirks. Eric has his quirks, and, it all just kind of works together. And so, I'm so grateful for that experience. I've loved the opportunity doing TV. I hope that there's maybe more opportunities like that in the future, but, it's there's nothing like baseball on the radio. And, I'm so thankful that I get to be a part of our broadcast.
Well, you guys do a fantastic job, and I'm not just saying that because I've got you on the air and because we're friends. But I've listened to you guys. I've listened to Eric since he was the color guy for Mark Holtz. That tells you, anybody that's any kind of a Rangers fan knows how long ago that's been. But I'll tell you, Eric is, you guys are, it's almost like just a well-oiled machine. Whether it's you and Eric, whether it's you and Matt, whether it's Matt and Eric, it doesn't matter. There's no missing a beat. It's almost like it's the same type of person walking in. You guys gel so well together, whatever pair is in there. And it just seems to go really fantastic. The broadcasts are fantastic. Like I say, I'm not just saying that because we've known each other for a long time. It's the God's honest truth.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we have a lot of fun, and we always appreciate hearing from people who tune in and kind of sharing the Rangers experience with us.
You and your wife also are very involved with a lot of philanthropic stuff in the DFW area. Care to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we run it's called the Sandlot Children's Charity. We support kids with physical and intellectual disabilities by providing financial assistance that allows them to get involved in athletics and active programming, or if they already are involved, perhaps it's something they're pursuing at a really high level, and want to make sure that finances don't get in the way of their ability to, say, travel to a national tournament if they've achieved at that level, or want to try and pursue an athletic event or activity to that degree. So it's anything from introducing these kids to sports or allowing them to thrive as a competitor. We just want to make sure that finances aren't a barrier, because unfortunately for a lot of these kids, it's a lot more expensive for them to get involved than it is the average person. For instance, if you want to play wheelchair basketball, you can't just use your regular everyday wheelchair. You got to get one specific to that sport, and those are expensive. You're talking about $5,000. Whereas if I want to go play basketball, I'm able-bodied. I'm not in a wheelchair. I just got to buy some basketball shoes. And as crazy as those have become in terms of cost, it pale in comparison to the cost of a wheelchair. And that's just one example. Right. There are all sorts of different sports and activities that require various levels of assistance or technology or equipment. And those things are not cheap. And, on top of that, these families a lot of times are spending a ton of money. They have a lot of expenses tied to the care for these kids. And, maybe, their expenses make it prohibitive for these kids to be able to participate, because, families have to make tough decisions on where to allocate funds. We just want to try and be a support system for these kids and their families to make sure that that's not an issue.
How do folks find out more about the organization and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, the sandlot.org is the website. That's probably the best place. I'm on Twitter at Jared Sandler, and we have a charity Twitter at Sandlot Charity that's not as active. So typically if there's anything going on with the charity, I'll be tweeting about it. But we got a happy hour coming up on August 29th at Preston Playhouse in Dallas. It's a indoor pickleball facility, and then we'll announce the details of our main event. We'll be back at Globe Life Field this December. It's going to be Sunday, December 8th, and we'll have more details released in a couple weeks on that. But the sandlot.org is the website, and all the information can be found there.
In general, how do folks get in contact with you, keep up with what's going on, listen to you guys on the broadcast?
Well, they can always call Matt Hicks. He loves giving out his cell phone to people. His number is 214-5. No, I'm just kidding.
555-1212.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, Matt's in here, so I had to put him on edge for a second. At Jared Sandler on Twitter, but then our broadcasts are on 105.3 The Fan in the DFW Metroplex. If you go to the Texas Rangers website, they have a portion of the website for the broadcast that it provides a map. If you're all over the Southwest region, it tells you what station that will be on. But 105.3 The Fan, the MLB.com app, the Odyssey app. Thankfully, with technology, there are all sorts of different ways to listen these days.
Man, I appreciate you very much. I'm looking forward to getting up there for the series this coming week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Rangers and Pirates. Skeens on Monday, if I remember right. So that should be a packed house, if I remember correctly, for that one. Should be a packed house for all three. But beautiful facility you guys are playing in.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. And, it's really cool with the new schedule, getting to see teams like the Pirates come to town every other year and not having to wait 6 years to see different teams, different players. So it'll be fun to get to see the Pirates.
Buddy, I appreciate the time. I know you got a broadcast to get prepped for because you guys go on the air in about, 3.5, 4 hours. So I just appreciate the time, man. Thanks a ton. I owe you a big one.
You owe me nothing. Thanks so much for having me, Rich.
All right, buddy. Hey, that's Jared Sandler, the pre- and post-game host of the Texas Rangers Radio Network, as well as the play-by-play voice fill in on the TV side at Bally Sports Southwest. Appreciate you guys checking in on this special edition, Pirates Rangers edition of Pirates Chat. You can catch me at Go Big Go Home Pod on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it this week. On Facebook, it's my name, Rich Richardson. And I appreciate everything. Adam wasn't able to be here this afternoon. He had some previous engagements, but he and I will be back on Wednesday night here on the Driving to the Top Productions with another edition of Pirates Chat. And Tuesday night, it's open mic night. And man, if you haven't had a chance to check out open mic night, you got to check that out. 8 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Eastern, right here, Driving to the Top Productions. Is a killer. We get a ton of things said and a lot of wild things get said. We can take that to the bank. Again, it's Big Rich. We appreciate you guys listening. It is Driving to the Top Productions. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as your YouTube. Subscribe and like the broadcast. Until next time, see you later.